Hi Homeworthy, I'm Sophie Paterson, interior designer. Welcome to my home in Surrey, England. Come on in.
Watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Sophie Paterson. I'm an interior designer, and today we are here in my home in Surrey in England. We found this house back in 2012 and it was a complete new build. At the point that I found it, it was just the shell of a building. And what really drew me to it was the layout of the space. It's very open plan, but you can shut each room, so it really gives you that flexibility for living. Also, we were moving from South Kensington in London. We lived in a very small views house. So when I saw this property, it was further out of London than I planned on moving to. But with all the natural light coming in from the garden, the big garden at the back, the scale of it, I just fell in love with it. For me, this was a home that I felt we would have a family in. It was going to be our forever home. And my personal style is very much a blend of classic and contemporary. This property is a neo-Georgian house, so it's taken inspiration from the Georgian era. And I really wanted to combine that more traditional architecture with some contemporary furnishings. Right now we are in our entrance hall, and the feel that I really wanted to create in here was to make it feel as bright and spacious as possible. I also really wanted to layer in some character and architectural detail. When we found the house, it was just the bare bones of a new build, and I really felt like it was lacking character. So one of the things I knew I wanted to do early on was add some paneling onto the walls. And one of my tricks that I've used to do this is where we didn't want to rip all the cornice and the skirting off, we added some plant-on moulding, which is something you've probably seen a lot, but then we also added this extra MDF detail that just gives it some depth. And I felt instantly the whole house felt like it had a bit more character. It had that kind of hybrid of classical, traditional design that I love, which we were then able to layer up with some contemporary furniture. This particular piece is probably one of my favorites, and I love it because it's the first thing you see as you walk in, and it's an antique that I've bought online. You'll see as we walk around the home, we have a lot of antiques here, and they're all my favorite pieces of furniture. What I love about this piece is it's got this flamed oak, and flamed oak has lots of sort of pattern and variety in the grain, and it looks so beautiful. And I think a lot of people worry when they're sourcing antiques. I know a lot of my clients can feel quite intimidated by it. How do you pick a good antique? How do you know if it will work? And I think don't worry about the provenance of the antique. For me, it's all about the materials themselves. So when I'm looking, whether it's online or in person, I always look at the joints, I look at the materials themselves, I look at the wood, the marble, and do you like the piece? You're not buying it necessarily as an investment. When I buy antiques, I'm sometimes buying them from eBay or markets. They're not huge investments, but it's just got to be a piece that I love. So I think so many people are scared to even try and buy antiques, but I really recommend everyone should embrace it because it adds so much interest into your room. Above that, I've layered it with a mirror. And this is from one of my favourite suppliers in the UK. If you ever get the chance to go to Pimlico Road, it's just this plethora of amazing interior design shops. Everyone loves it there. And this particular supplier is called Jam. Jam have an amazing collection, almost museum worthy, of antiques and reproduction pieces. So even if you're not shopping, go in there for a little tour. They're very friendly. So I got this mirror and these wall lights that flank it, the lanterns, are both from Jam. Flanking either side, I've got a pair of antique chairs, and I had these reupholstered, and where the chest of drawers doesn't really marry in with any of the other colours in the room in terms of the timber, I made sure that they still sort of felt cohesive by picking a fabric on the chairs that ties in with this black and white and grey marble on top. My husband and I really love to have pieces that have memories attached to them, and this painting is one of my favourite pieces of art that we own. It was a gift from my in-laws, and it's by a Scottish artist called Alison Dunlop. What I love about it is it's a really contemporary take on one of those classical oil paintings. It's got so much intricate detail, but it still feels very modern at the same time. This was previously hanging in their townhouse in Edinburgh, so I have lots of happy memories of going to their home in Scotland, seeing it there, and now it hangs in our entrance hall. I always like to take inspiration from the artwork into the room itself, whether that's the fabrics or the colour scheme in general. So here I've picked out the feather motif that you've got in the painting and brought that down onto these cushions that we had made for the sofa. This sofa is one of my dog's favourite pieces actually. Pip, my Dachshund, is obsessed with cashmere, and surprisingly the sofa's managed to withstand a lot of slobbering and jumping up and down by him, so it's worked out to be quite practical, but I also love how it's an unexpected fabric to see in your entrance hall. The main focal point as you walk into our entrance is this staircase, and it has some real wow factor. When we bought the property, the staircase that the builder had designed was completely different. He had it blocked off at the back, and it was much more angular, and I knew straight away that I wanted to change that. I wanted it to feel as soft and curved as possible and really open, so we removed all the storage that they'd designed, kept it open, and we designed this balustrade that again has that mix of classical and contemporary. And then because we have a skylight in the roof above, again we wanted to bring as much of that light down into this space as possible, so we added an eglamise mirror. This one's by one of my favourite suppliers called Stuart Fox. And what's great about this eglamise mirror is, unlike a clear mirror where you see all your fingerprints, because we've got kids and marks, this kind of disguises any of those fingerprints that you might have on there, so it's really practical and it has a sort of more antique feel to it. Symmetry is really important to me in any room that I design, but particularly in an entrance hall where you've got the central staircase. I knew I wanted to have a pair of tables on either side, and I tried really hard to find a matching pair of antique tables that would work, but sadly it was just not possible. So we had these fabricated. But again, because I wanted to mix the antiques in here as much as possible, I layered them up with these antique urns that I found in Petworth. Petworth is this gorgeous village in West Sussex, and it's renowned for amazing antiques. And it's such an amazing day out, even if you're not shopping, just to go there to get inspiration. Anyway, we stumbled upon these urns in an antique shop that was closing down, and straight away I knew they'd be perfect for this space. They just add, again, some different patina, different materials. We've put some faux orchids in there, but normally if we're having an event or a party, we take these out, they're just in a bucket, and then we'll get loads of flowers depending on the time of the year. At Christmas we get mini Christmas trees with lights, so it's a really fun feature to dress and make a focal point in here. And then on the table itself we've just laid it with loads of photo frames. I can't get enough of photo frames because I just love looking at happy memories. So as you walk in through the main door, one of the things that I loved about this property was it has a really grand entrance hall. It has a central staircase that branches off into two separate staircases that take you upstairs. And then the layout on the ground floor is we have a cozy TV room on the left. Then next to that you walk through into the open plan kitchen. That's probably my favourite room, and it's where we spend most of our time. We have open plan dining, the kitchen with a huge central island, and then a sitting room where we sit and watch movies as a family. Off the side of that sitting room we have a utility room and all the back of house. And then next to the kitchen on the other side we have a semi-open plan dining room which has double doors from the kitchen and also into the sitting room. Upstairs we have 4 bedrooms. When we bought it, it was a 5-bedroom house, but I turned one of the bedrooms into a separate dressing room for me. I feel like that's the secret to a happy marriage: separate bathrooms and separate dressing rooms. So now we're going to head into our sitting room, which is where we take all our guests when we're entertaining. This is our formal sitting room, and this is really the place where, if we're having a dinner party, all of our friends and guests will gather in here for drinks. We use this space a lot with family events like Christmas, but even at the weekend, my husband and I love to sit in here if we're having a drink. We'll sit in here, put the fire on, and have just chats after the kids have gone to bed. So it's a really much used space. I think a lot of people are scared or don't tend to use their formal spaces as much, but this is one of my favourite rooms in the house because it's got windows on both sides and it just has a really calming feel. Things that we've done in here, so the very first thing I do when I'm designing any space, whether it's for myself or clients, is I always start with a floor plan. Now, this is a square room, but it's not a very easy shaped room to design because you have the double doors coming off the entrance hall, and then you also have double doors from the dining room, and the double doors off the entrance hall are on a diagonal, so it kind of puts off all that symmetry that I would like to have in here. So I kind of had to play around with the furniture layouts to counteract that. But we knew that we wanted as much seating as possible because we love to have quite big dinner parties. So that really kind of started the whole space planning. And then when it came to the colour scheme itself, my starting point was this beautiful silk wallpaper, which we've had here ever since we moved in. It was one of our biggest investments. When we first bought this property, we'd spent all of our money on the house itself, so we decorated quite slowly. But this was one of the big ticket items that I knew that I wanted straight away, and it's one of those things that it's just timeless. I know we're always going to like it. We've evolved our house quite a lot in the 13 years we've been here, but this is something that will never go until I go. So I'm really pleased with it. And I think what's nice about silk or any kind of fabric wall covering is it gives you that really cocooning, soft feel that I really wanted in here. There's quite a lot of hard finishes, but it gives you that kind of feeling of warmth and coziness, and it kind of changes with the light throughout the day, so it can feel quite sort of cool in the morning, and then in the evening under candlelight has a really cozy glow. So for the curtains or drapes, as you like to call them in the US, I really wanted to keep them off the windows as much as possible. That's something that I always do because I didn't want to block the light. This is north facing, so we really wanted to bring in as much light as possible, and we wanted to keep it quite understated. So rather than going for big pelmets, we've done this curtain pocket where the corner sits forward of the wall itself, and it allows you to run a track all the way along the ceiling, and the curtains just go up into that recess. For the fabrics in here in general, I kind of built it around the colour palette of the silk wallpaper, so there's lots of cool greys and whites and taupes. I love neutral interiors on the whole. I find them very calming and timeless, but then it's really important to me that it doesn't feel too flat, so then we've really embraced a lot of texture. So you can see on things like this table lamp, for example, it's got this really emphasized texture, and it's quite a rustic table lamp. And I think I really like that juxtaposition of something that's really refined, whether it's silk velvets or silk on the walls, and then something like a plaster lamp on an antique table. It's unexpected, and for me it feels more interesting. We've evolved this room quite a lot since we've lived here. Our tastes have changed as a couple, our lifestyles changed. We've now got children. When we first moved here we didn't, and as a result we're not scared to keep changing the house up. I also find it really fun, and I don't know any interior designer that doesn't want to change their home constantly. So one of the big changes we did about 4 years ago was, as well as changing some of the pieces of furniture, we changed the rug to a sisal. And again, it goes with that ethos of different textures, different styles, combining. I wanted something that was going to sort of play down the luxury of this room and make it feel a bit more everyday, so it didn't feel like it was too formal a space to use for less formal gatherings. I am not a design snob. I really don't care where things come from. So if you look at this blue and white chinoiserie vase collection, this was a collection I built over a few days where I was ill in bed several years ago with the flu, and I just went crazy on eBay. I literally bought every blue and white chinoiserie vase I could find, and I love them. And to me, they really don't, it doesn't matter like, you know, where they're from or what they're worth. I just wanted to have a full fireplace of blue and white vases, and they work so well when we have an event or when we're having a gathering. I fill them all with flowers, and you only need to spend a limited amount of money on flowers, and you can fill them all, and it creates this amazing grand statement as you walk in. I've collected more blue and white chinoiserie. The thing is, once I start collecting something, I'm quite bad at stopping. Luckily, I have a double garage here as well, which is kind of like my storage unit for all the items that I can't fit in the house. But that's kind of mixed onto the table itself as well. So I love having the blue and white vase, and then even things like my friends know that I love blue and white so much. So one of my good friends, who's also a designer, bought me this calligraphy brush, which I love. Last weekend was glorious sunshine here. We had all the doors at the back of the house. Every single room has French doors. We opened them all up. We ended up spending most of the weekend in the garden, so it really is nice to have that indoor-outdoor vibe. Whenever we're sitting down, like I mentioned earlier, so whenever we're sitting down, I always like to make sure that everyone has a table within reaching distance for their drink. This is one of my top tips, anyone watching this. If you want your guests to feel relaxed, make sure that they can put their drink down somewhere. This one actually I designed myself, and it's from a company called Loom. And I love how it kind of tucks into the sofa. So if you're lying down, you don't have to reach for your drink, it's just right there. And my kids all fight over these tables because we've got one in this room and one in our other family room. And they love on a Friday night to have their dinner, not at the dining table, but on these tables. And it's kind of like those, I don't know if anyone in the US or anyone watching this channel used to do it, but my sisters and I back in the 90s would have those tray tables that we'd sit on the sofa and watch our TV shows and eat our dinner, and it's kind of like a more chic version of that. I really love this table in this corner because there's a lot of plug sockets behind it, and one of my pet hates in interior design is seeing cables and seeing plug sockets. So I knew I wanted to have a solid table, and I really love skirted tables because they have that classical side to them. And then we've made it a little bit more understated by using a really rustic linen. This is a Belgium linen that I found at the Chelsea Harbour. And then we added this trim along the bottom, which is from Samuel & Sons. And underneath is actually just a garden table that I found online. Super cheap table, but it just happened to be the right proportions that I wanted for this corner. And then I've just dressed it with this beautiful table lamp from Porta Romana, which is one of my favourite manufacturers for chandeliers and table lamps. Over on the other side of the room is this cabinet that again was a later addition. Previously we had a console here, but I really wanted to bring something with glazing here, so I felt like it balanced all the windows and the doors on the other side, and I love all the reflections that you get through the glass. This again was a piece that I found on eBay, and it was previously pine, so I had one of my decorators paint it. We went for a light colour on the outside, we changed the handles. These ones are from Armac Martin, just added a little tassel. And then on the inside, we've painted it this really dark grey so that all your objects really pop out against that darker colour. One of our main things that we love to do at home is entertain. We are always the friends that have the dinner parties. For my family and my husband's family, we are the place where everyone comes for holidays. We host Christmas and any kind of Father's Day or gatherings. We love to entertain, and I think that was a big influence on how we designed the space. We love the fact that we have this great formal space in the sitting room. There's no TV in here. It's all about socializing. Myself that I sat when I did this room, and the layout was just have as much seating as possible. So I've got seating on 4 sides of the room, and it makes for great cocktail parties. Everyone has really great sort of social gatherings in here, and we can fit lots of people in. So now I'm going to take you through into our formal dining room. This is one of the most recently updated rooms that we have here in the house. For quite a few years, this was my children's playroom, which filled me with absolute dread because it was just this cascade of toys that would continually flow back into the formal sitting room. So it's really nice to have it back into a dining room. We can have all the doors open again. The starting point for the design in here was the wallpaper. This is the olive grove wallpaper by Fremantle, and it forms part of our collection that we designed together. And the reason why I wanted to use this wallpaper here is because this room sort of projects forward into the garden, and so you've got views on 3 sides looking at greenery. We actually used to have lots of olive trees in the garden, but sadly those died. And I love how it's got that indoor-outdoor feel. It's not a space that we just use at night time. We also use it during the day for lunches, so I didn't want it to feel too dark and oppressive. I've taken the colour scheme and the kind of like organic theme from the wallpaper onto the chandelier with this oak leaf chandelier that we've got in the middle. And again, I like how it's quite understated. It doesn't feel too fancy. It's just got this really sort of simple, rusty metal finish. And then one of the very first pieces of furniture that I bought for this room was, whilst it was still a playroom and I was just dreaming of having a dining room again, I found this cabinet. I think it's called a Dutch bomb cabinet, or maybe a linen press. I found it from an antiques dealer called Lawford's, who's a really well-known antiques dealer in the UK, and I absolutely fell in love with its shape. I love how it's got this really sort of soft scalloped shape at the top with this crescent, and then these really chunky drawers at the bottom. So this has actually been sat in my garage for about 3-4 years. So again, at Christmas time, we had this really ambitious plan of redecorating this room in time to be able to host Christmas in here. And it was so nice to finally get it out of the garage and back into the house. This table I designed custom. We actually had our dining table that we still have in the kitchen temporarily in here. And it was quite good to kind of try out different shapes, because sometimes if you live with a space, you can kind of work out what you really need. And I quickly realized that I didn't want to have straight lines in this room, where the antique cabinet has lots of soft curves and there's all the organic shapes in the wallpaper. Anything with straight lines just really clashed with that. So I designed this shape because I love to have a rectangular table in terms of dressing, but then what I've done is made the sides very slightly convex, and that has the benefit that when you're sitting there in a row, you're not all perfectly straight, so you can still converse with the person on the other side of your neighbour. And it also works really well with the shape of the room we've got. And then I've rounded all the corners. I designed a project in the Gulf about 2-3 years ago under the principles of feng shui. And ever since then, I've kind of avoided sharp corners because they refer to it as poison arrows and it's meant to bring you bad fortune. So now it's kind of stuck in the back of my head, and every time I'm designing some custom furniture, I'm like, let's round the corner. But it also feels much more soft and organic, and where you have some sort of tight pinch points in this room, it works really well to soften those corners. For the chairs themselves, I've gone for a combination of different styles. So these chairs were originally in our kitchen, and you'll see shortly that we now have a table with no chairs. And I wasn't sure if they'd work well in this room, but I really like them in here. I like the fact that we have 2 different styles because it feels a bit more unexpected. These ones are super comfortable, and they've got a beautiful herringbone wool fabric from De La Conya. But what I like about these chairs is that we had them custom made, and they are all leather, so they're super easy to clean. We have an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and if they weren't wiped clean, then I'd have to get them reupholstered every 6 months. So I like to have that balance of practical and luxurious. I don't want things just to look good and everyone's kind of stressed they can't relax. Behind me, this is one of my favorite vases that we own. It's by an artist in Paris called Gilles Caffier. And I actually own 3 of his pieces that I've got around the home. I've got just one at the moment because I've got a second plinth on order. And this again is from a collection that we designed for Loom. And I really like how it's got a really simple base, and then we've got the Calicata Viola marble, which I purposely picked to kind of bring out the colour of the olives that we've got on the wallpaper. And hopefully in a couple of weeks, we're going to have another one on this side too. These wall lights or sconces are from Porto Romano, and we've had these as long as we've had the house. They've lived through a lot of revolutions of this room. So when we first moved in, we had a different dining room, which I can share a photo of what that used to look like. But I was not sure if they were going to work with this scheme, but actually I was really happy that the lampshade ties in perfectly with the green of the olives, so we decided to keep them. I don't like to throw things out just for the sake of it. We always try and reuse things, or if I am getting rid of something, I try and give it to a friend or family or seller. These are quite an old edition. I think these are the things that we've had longest in this whole room. Through these double doors, we have the kitchen. Now this is a room that's in real transition, and it's definitely something that we want to change. We're actually going to be doing a big renovation later this year, and this is one of the main rooms that's going to change. Everything that you've seen so far is staying, but where we've grown from a couple to a family of 4, I now have 2 children that eat me out of my fridge every couple of days, so we just need more storage. But also, truthfully, my taste has changed. So when I designed this kitchen 12-13 years ago, I loved this dark oak, whereas now I'm craving a much sort of lighter colour palette throughout here. But I'll tell you some of the things that do still work, that I do still like about this kitchen. So it's a really sociable space, and when we have family over, particularly if we're entertaining on a sort of more casual level, everyone always wants to sit at the island, and I always end up cooking here and talking to them whilst they're sitting. And what I particularly like is that we've got this mirror splashback, so that when you're sat at the island, you can see the garden reflected in the splashback, and it's a really nice way to enjoy that view rather than just having to look out the window. We've changed a few things in this kitchen over the years. So this is a specialist liquid metal finish. This is by a company called Anchor. And when I was pregnant with my son, Well, actually, every time I've been pregnant, so with my daughter and my son, I get this massive urge to do nesting, and that's when the big renovations happen in our house. Well, I'm done having kids now, and I think that's part of the reason why I keep delaying this renovation. I've had it planned for 2 years, but I just don't have that impetus to do it. But when I was pregnant with my son, this changed. We changed the lighting throughout the whole house. We changed some of the bedrooms. And what I like about this particular finish is that it brings in a textural contrast. Before, these were all timber and it felt quite flat, whereas now you've got something that's much more interesting and layered. If we head down into the sitting room area, this is where we tend to sit in the summer months with all the French doors open. It's like a great space where you can be outside with the fire pit that's just through the doors. And the kids tend to come in here and watch TV after they've kind of grown bored of playing in the garden. I really love sitting here because it's one of those areas where you don't have to worry about the fabrics. This sofa we've had as long as we've had the house, so 13 years. And I purposely chose a really dark colour because we've always had dogs. We used to have a black Cocker Spaniel who would jump up on the sofa, having run around in all the mud in the garden, and now we have a Dachshund that does the same. So it's just a really practical fabric. This table is a new addition. I really love how it picks out that aubergine tone into the Calacatta viola marble. And then this finish on the chimney brass, this is a specialist plaster finish, and I really love introducing lots of different textures into our home where we don't really have a huge amount of colour in every room. I think texture plays such an important part in making sure that it doesn't feel too flat and boring. And then on either side we have some shelves, and you know, even the shelves in our home are just layered with loads of photo frames. It just makes me feel really happy every time I look at these pictures. They have such happy memories attached to them, so that's something that we love to have in our home. Where this is such a large kitchen, I really didn't want it to feel utilitarian. I didn't want to have everything built in, so I've mixed in quite a lot of freestanding furniture in here, including this antique bureau. I think this is probably the first antique that I ever bought, certainly for this house. And inside it we keep all of our letters, but since we've had kids, it tends to get raided with them, and it's now full of sunglasses as well. And above it, I've dressed it with this beautiful piece of art by an artist that sadly since died, called Fenella Elms, and she was one of my really favourite artists. She does these beautiful pieces with small porcelain discs, and each one's hand applied, and it has this kind of cascading effect. It almost looks to me like an ocean that's in a storm, and we've had it lit specifically so it really like highlights all that texture. Now, where this is a kitchen, you wouldn't expect to have that much art, but I really like to have as much art in here as possible, and I think it's important to mix the different styles of art as well. So in the sitting area, we've got some oil paintings. This was the first one that I bought for the kitchen, and I love all the soft pastel colours in it. But then once it was hung, it felt really unbalanced to me that we didn't have a piece of art on this wall. So one of my things that I often do is buy antique picture frames on eBay or online, and I found the picture frame first, and then I commissioned the same artist to make a smaller oil painting that kind of brought those colours across onto this wall. These horse sculptures are something that gives me a lot of pleasure. I used to ride a lot when I was younger, and I had an ex-racing thoroughbred. I just find horses such an elegant animal. These particular ones are by an artist called Alexander Surrey, and I love how they've got the elongated legs. The only thing is, my kids love to sit and eat at the island, and then they want to watch TV, so these poor delicate horses have to get moved multiple times a day, which gives me a bit of headache and stress, but they look so beautiful when they're here that I can't bear to move them. For the bar stools, I always like to prioritise comfort and size. Rather than trying to squeeze 5 here, I'd rather go for 4 really good sized ones. And these are so comfortable because they've got arms. Personally, I can't bear those bar stools where you sit there and there's nothing to support your back. This is a place where we'll sit for many hours with a glass of wine and chat to whoever's cooking, and they're a really popular place for everyone to come and sit in. Just off to the side of the sitting room, the kitchen, we have the utility room, which is the smallest but hardest working room in our house. Now, obviously we use this for laundry, but I also use this for storing all of our candles, for flower arranging. I spend a lot of time in this room. Some of my favourite features include this cupboard here, which I probably should have tidied before I showed you. But this is what we call our candle pantry, because my husband and I love scented candles. So we store all of those here, and it's something that we use a lot and gives me a lot of pleasure. Storage to me is really key. And then On the other side, we have lots of cleaning products. In this corner, because I love flower arranging, I had this curved cabinet made, and it's where we store all of our vases, which is just so handy when I'm arranging flowers. This cabinet was originally designed for where I was going to do all my flower arranging. You can see I've got a pot filler tap, but it's ended up being a cupboard where we store all of our Amazon deliveries, all of our parcels and packages. And actually it's shown me what a useful addition that is to any home. So now when I'm designing clients' homes, I always include a parcel cupboard because everyone gets loads of packages and you need somewhere to store them all in. So this is where we currently store all of these, and then we've got lots of drawers for, tools that I use for flower arranging, even things like, shoe polishes. This space works incredibly hard, and then we have our post stored up there. I love a big butler sink, and this one's great because we can fit our dachshund in here, we give him his baths in here. This is also where I do all the flower arranging. And where we spend so much time in this room, I actually wanted to fill it with art as well. So we have an oil painting on the shelf. Again, it's just like leaning against the shelf, which is something I love to do. And my husband thought I was crazy when I was out at this art market with him. I was like, I'm gonna buy this for our utility room. But actually he's had to eat his words, because now he always says to me, I really like the fact that when we're in here, we get to appreciate these pieces of art because it's so unexpected. And then on the other side, I have another painting, and this one I bought in Boston. It's by a Finnish artist. Do you know what? I'm not even gonna try and say his name. I'm gonna show you on camera. But I found this in an art gallery in Boston, and it's a dragonfly. But I really love his painting style, and I try and buy pieces of art or collect things whenever I'm traveling, whether it's for work or pleasure, so you've got those memories when you come home. So back off the main entrance hall, we have our main powder room, which we have gone very luxurious with. I think it's something people love to do in general. I redesigned this one about 6 years ago when that big renovation when I was pregnant with my son. One of the things I really like to do in bathrooms in general is block the view of the toilet. So the toilet stayed in its original position, but I built this half-height wall, just a little nib, so that it kind of disguises the view of the toilet and separates the vanity area from that toilet area. The main feature in here is the wall covering. This one is called Branches in the Breeze, and I designed it with Fermentals so that it looks like it's spring branches, and you can see like the blossoms kind of cascading off the branches. It gives me a really sort of calming feel in here. And when we first designed this, I'll show you my bedroom, what we ended up putting in there, but I envisaged putting this one in my bedroom, but my husband loved one of the other wallpapers from the collection, so we put this in the powder room as a compromise. And I really love how it turned out. I recently layered this painting on top of the wallpaper, and I know a lot of people don't like to put art on top of hand-painted wallpaper, but I really like to layer it. But it's something that I really take my time in doing. We'd had this room like this for 6 years until I found the right piece of art. I'd actually commissioned this for our dining room, but then when I put it on top of that wallpaper, it felt too big. But it was a happy accident that it works so well in the guest powder room. There's an amazing antiques fair in Battersea Park in London every few months, and this was a purchase that I made there. It's this tiny little mirror, and it's so old that it's almost like not a mirror anymore, but I love how it's got this mercury glass and adds so much patina. And again, it's just the perfect size that it fitted in amongst the branches without covering up too much of that beautiful wallpaper. The last room on the ground floor that I'm going to share with you is my husband's study, and this has got a very masculine feel. It's a space just for him, so I really wanted to embrace that sort of darker colour palette. We started with the wallpaper. I do tend to start with the wallpaper a lot, I'm realising. This one is a Fornasetti design from Cole & Son, and it's got this really beautiful cloud pattern on it, and I love how it's got this really dramatic feel, but it also still feels contemporary. But it's a really nice dark backdrop to layer up with all those warm mahogany and walnut antiques that we've got in here. This antique Louis Vuitton chast was a present that I bought for his birthday about 10 years ago. But really it was a present for myself because I wanted one of these in our home. So I kind of killed two birds with one stone, but luckily he loved it too. I found it from an antiques dealer, and I knew that I wanted to use it as a sideboard. So a little trick that I did was have a joinery firm, or I think you call it carpentry in the US, manufactured this base just to lift it up slightly so that it was more usable as a sideboard. And then I've layered it up with this David Lindley lamp, beautiful Macassar ebony, and again, lots of photo frames and knickknacks. The painting above is an oil painting I found on eBay. Again, a lot of eBay purchases, and it's something that looks, it's beautifully painted. The quality of it's amazing. It's always a bit of a gamble when you buy art online or antiques online, but I think I kind of like that thrill, knowing if it's going to be good. What I find with this painting, and it'll be interesting to see if you can see this on video, is his eyes follow you wherever you are in the room. So if I stand near the sofa, it looks like he's looking at me, but if I'm standing behind the desk, it still looks like he's looking straight at you. So it's kind of freaky, but I do still like it. Pretty much all of the furniture in my husband's study is antique, and that was very intentional because he grew up in a beautiful townhouse in Edinburgh, and his parents have great taste, lots of antiques, and so it's something that felt very natural to him and something that he was really drawn to. And I think that was part of the journey sort of 13 years ago of what really helped me embrace antiques. These were also some early purchases. We found this bookshelf again in Petworth, and it was part originally of a huge built-in library in a stately home, but this was one section that they'd removed. And I really love how where it's got the antique glass. You can see it's sort of convex and it's not perfectly straight. And again, it creates those really beautiful reflections of the room. Especially at Christmas time, we have a Christmas tree opposite and you can see all the lights twinkling in the glass, so I love that. This vase next to it is another one by Giles Caffier. And my husband doesn't know it yet, but I'm actually going to steal this for our dining room because I want to go with the other vase as a matching pair. So I'll have to order something else to sit on this plinth. But I really love the texture of his work and the form. I feel like it's just very tactile. And works in almost any interior. This piece is one of the biggest pieces of art Fenella Realms ever made, and I think it's such a special piece for that because obviously now she's no longer with us, you can't get them anymore. My husband absolutely loves it, and I love it's the first thing you see as you walk into the study. And also if he's ever doing Zoom calls, it's his Zoom background and people always ask him about it. So I think it's a really beautiful piece and it works so well with the movement in the piece of art itself next to the clouds, which have like this stormy sky. I feel like that's got a really nice relationship. On either side, I've flanked it with an antique sideboard. This one's an old games table which folds up. And I really wanted to find a matching pair, but I couldn't quite find the perfect pair. So I actually like how these two correlate. They're both rosewood, but they're slightly different proportions and style, but they still give you that sense of balance. So as well as being a space that my husband works from, he also likes to socialise in here. So I designed a small little sitting area for him. And I think his favourite chairs are these chairs because they swivel. So if he's having a meeting, people can kind of face him at the desk. But if he's wanting to watch TV whilst he's pretending to work, he can watch a football match and sit on these chairs. They are a silk velvet and they're a fabric that I particularly like. I think if ever I have a client that's very particular about fabrics marking, it's not something I'd recommend. But personally, I like how over time they've got a few marks on them and I feel like it just adds to the patina and makes it even more beautiful. We've combined that with an antique chair. This was something that I bought at auction, and I've got this little Scottish flag in honour of his heritage of being Scottish that sits there. This was a gift from a client of mine about 12 years ago who's also Scottish. And then finally on this side of the room, we have a leather Chesterfield couch, which is so comfortable. I love sitting in here. Sometimes if I'm working from home, I'll come and lie in here and answer emails on my mobile. And we've laid that with some Prince Charles check tartan and this beautiful buckle cushion. This is one of my favourite suppliers of fabric. De La Cogne, they also do some ready-made cushions too. Where this area was quite tight and I didn't have room for a side table on both sides of the sofa, I opted to go for a floor lamp. And these pieces were something that my in-laws gave us when they sold their house in Edinburgh. They were downsizing to another property, and so we were very lucky to inherit a few pieces of furniture from them. So they work perfectly in the space, but I also love the fact that there's something that's been in the family. And then in the corner, I've added another skirted table, similar to the one that we did in the living room. For the window treatments, again, I really wanted to go for something as masculine as possible. Here, we didn't really have the space on the wall to have art as well as curtain stacks, so I've gone for Roman blinds, and I've gone for a tartan in the middle to kind of go with that heritage Scottish feel. And then I've done a border of tan leather down the side, and it again just adds to that sort of Ralph Lauren feel in here and feels very masculine. My career into interior design was quite a convoluted route. Although I started my passion for interior design at a very young age, for as long as I can remember, I was obsessed with making spaces beautiful. Even as a 5-year-old girl, I was always rearranging my room, tidying up my room, my sister's rooms, my friends' rooms. I just felt at peace when I was doing something that made a space beautiful. That said, I then went down a much more academic route. I studied international management and Spanish. It really wasn't my passion, so after university, I did a complete U-turn and went back to interior design. And I had a very lucky opportunity that I got a project offered to me by a developer that I knew through some friends of friends in London. He'd seen our home that we had in London at the time, loved how I decorated it, and asked me firstly who I had hired to do it, and when I told him I did it myself, he offered me to do it for him. So that was really my first taste of interior design for clients other than just doing my own home. And I did that project for free. I was too nervous to take a fee for him in case I messed it up. He was really happy with what I did. We did several more projects again afterwards. And then very early on I realized how important marketing was. So this was kind of 2008. There wasn't any social media at the time, but I did all my own press releases. And then when Facebook came out, I really embraced Facebook. Then I followed that with the wave of Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I've built my business thanks to social media and also just word of mouth. I think having those relationships with clients has been a really key part of my growth and building a company. And I think for us, it gives us a lot of reassurance. You know, when someone recommends a client or you have a mutual friend, you feel like you're going to have that connection. And I think for the client as well, it gives them a real sense of reassurance. If someone's worked with you and still has good things to say about you after you've finished a project together, that's a good sign. So now we've finished with the ground floor, we're going to head upstairs to have a look at the bedrooms. So now we're going to head into the primary bedroom. We converted one of the spare bedrooms and incorporated it into the main primary bedroom. So the first thing you're going to walk into is this kind of entrance lobby that we have. And I really love to have an entrance lobby before you get to the primary bedroom, so it just has a sense of separation, privacy, but we'll head in now. The rest of our home is very neutral, but when it came to our bedroom, we both fell in love with this deep burgundy wallpaper. My husband particularly loved it and really gave me the courage to go for it because I do tend to err towards neutrals, but we don't really tend to spend that much time in our bedroom during the day, so it's really a space for relaxing, winding down at night, and it feels so cozy and soothing to have this colour on the walls, especially when you've got sort of table lamps. We don't tend to have any of the overhead lights on at night time, got lots of candles, and we love sitting in here watching TV and winding down from the day. I've mixed the burgundy with quite a lot of ivory because I didn't want it to feel too dark, so there's a real sort of contrast in colour palette. You've got the dark burgundy on the walls, but then we've picked up the ivory in this wallpaper that's from Fromental onto the headboard, onto the drapes, even onto the furniture. So we've got very light coloured nightstands. We have this piece over here with mother of pearl, and I love how this picks out the light, but it also brings that colour so it's balanced around the room and there's a nice mix of dark and light. Above the chest of drawers, I've gone for an antiqued mirror, and again I love how it has the same effect as in our kitchen where you get to look out into the garden and get that beautiful reflection, all that natural light bouncing back in here. A lot of people have mixed feelings about TVs in bedrooms. Personally, I'm a big fan. I don't know if it's because I'm in my 40s and I've got young children and I'm just exhausted, but I love nothing better than putting my kids to bed and crawling in here and watching a TV show before I go to sleep. So we've gone for the biggest possible TV we can fit in here. We've integrated it into some custom joinery. This is a beautiful silk wall covering. I think this one's by Philip Jeffries. And then we've got flanking that some decorative shelves which we've dressed with some objects, and you can see it's got really small spotlights on each shelf so it highlights them beautifully. One of my favourite lighting features to do if you have slightly lower ceilings, as we do here, is to run an LED strip above any joinery, and that floods the ceiling with light and it gives the illusion that the ceiling is much higher. So that's a little tip for you. Off of the bedroom, this used to be a sitting room. In fact, this used to be open plan with a bedroom, but it felt too big. So one of the changes that we've made over the years is to block this off and bring a door here. But through here, we have our gym. Now, it's quite unconventional to have a gym off your bedroom, but actually it was a genius move because it means we can roll out of bed at 5, 6 a.m. and before we're even thinking about what we're doing, we can squeeze in a workout without waking up our children. What I love about this space is its light colour palette. It's a real contrast next to the bedroom. The bedroom's all about relaxing and sleeping, but you step in here and you feel quite invigorated. I did a whole mirror wall to make it feel as large as possible, and it's not designed like your typical gym. So obviously normally you'd have rubber matting. I really don't like the feel or the look of dark black rubber matting, so I've gone for a timber floor, and then we did an oversized wool rug where it's just used by my husband and I. We didn't need to worry about, you know, other people sweating on it, so this is very much designed just for us. And then I did these custom weight racks, which are a mix of timber, and then it has this wool fabric here, which again seems like a really unusual choice. I did test out some leathers, but where the weights are so heavy, it would indent the leather and leave a little mark, so I didn't want to have that. And this fabric, surprisingly, was the most practical when I did all my own testing. So it does look unusual, but I really love it, and it's got this really nice, soft, organic feel. So it kind of feels like a spa-like experience whilst you're torturing yourself and doing weights. Off of the gym, we have this gorgeous balcony. So after we've done our workout, this is where we come in the morning and we sit, have a coffee, and just sort of get ready for the day. It's a really lovely spot to just sit and have a look at the garden. So tucked behind the door from the bedroom, we have this little coffee station, and I wanted to treat this gym like it was part of the primary suite. So often I'll link the colours between the bedroom and the bathroom, and I wanted to do the same with the gym. So we brought the Calicut viola that's got those sort of dark burgundy tones that you've seen in the bedroom in here, and it just feels really luxurious. We've got a coffee machine, we store all of our coffee pods in here, we've got a little fridge down here, waters. It's a really great addition, again, because we have young children. We don't want to go downstairs, make too much noise. We can have a coffee, work out, relax, and the kids haven't even woken up yet. This bedroom is like a mini apartment in the house, and I think even before we had children, we designed it that it was going to be like a retreat from the rest of the house, a little mini escape. If I'm staying in the house by myself, my husband's traveling, I like to just spend as much time in the bedroom as possible. It just feels very cozy. And really, I think the way people live these days, we do spend more time at home. In the past, people kind of prioritize having lots and lots of bedrooms, whereas now I'm seeing a lot of my clients as well as ourselves, we wanted to just prioritize this primary suite and have everything we wanted up here. Leading off the foyer to the main bedroom, we have my dressing room. This was previously a guest bedroom, but we wanted to incorporate it into the main suite so we could have separate his and her dressing rooms. And this really is my ultimate escape from the world. I find it such a relaxing room. It's a space where I don't just get ready in the morning, but I even work here one day a week. I'll work from home and I sit at my dressing table and do Zoom calls and catch up on emails. I'm currently painting lots of dogs for a wallpaper that I'm designing. So I'll sit here and paint dogs, and it's just such a peaceful space. I've got beautiful view out of our garden, and it's just a retreat. I can shut the door and I don't have to listen or hear anyone. This dressing room, like pretty much all of the rooms in our house, has evolved quite a lot. Things that I've changed over time is we added this chinoiserie wallpaper. This was from Fremantle. This was actually the very first wallpaper that I had from them, or any chinoiserie wallpaper. And it was a real investment because it's all hand embroidered on silk, but I absolutely love it. You know, I look at it and appreciate it every single day. Even though I've had it for many, many years now, I'll notice small details, whether it's the bird or the butterflies. It gives me so much joy every time I look at it. Another thing that we changed over time was I realized very quickly was that I needed more storage. So I had an ottoman, sort of a chaise longue in the middle of the room here previously, and I changed it into an island. And this is just a great space for additional clothes storage, sunglasses. I feel like my biggest advice to any client or anyone designing a home is you can never have too much storage. So I just wanted to maximize all the storage I could get. The chandelier above is a really understated chandelier. It's kind of inspired by the Art Deco era. I've had it for a long time and it's kind of worked with every iteration of this room, and I think for me that's what I love about understated design, is that it is timeless and you might change other things in the room, but this will evolve and it works with so many different settings. My own home has been kind of like a science lab for our design studio over the years. I often test out ideas that I'm not sure if they'll work or be practical to live with in my own home before I try them on clients. And this wardrobe was an example of that. These are all upholstered in wool, and I really wanted to see how practical that would be, because for me, I don't like to have a wall of hard finishes of wood. It can feel quite oppressive, and where there was a lot of joinery in here, I felt it needed something a bit softer. So I had them upholstered in a fabric, and then they've got these really discreet handles, and it's something that's worked really well. But I'm glad that I did it in my own home first, because I've learned a lot from this. You know, it has got some marks over time, so this is why I always say test it on your own home, don't do it on a client. Now we've finished the primary bedroom, we are going to go and have a look at our children's bedrooms. We're now in my son Oscar's room, and he is 5 years old, but this is the design that I created for him even before he was born. And it's intentionally quite grown up, especially for a baby. And the reason why I did that was, now that I'm a mum, I realise how quickly children grow up. And so I didn't want to redesign it every few years as he transitioned to the next stage. So I've gone for a very sort of sophisticated backdrop of this herringbone wallpaper, which is by Philip Jeffries. And then I layered on some fun, playful elements with the artwork. So we have these felt animal heads. We've got this gorgeous lion. We have a giraffe, goat, I think it is, or a sheep, and an owl. These all by Fiona Walker England, which is a supplier in the UK. And I love how playful they are. And even though my son's 5, I asked him the other week, does he want to change them into something a bit more grown up, but he doesn't want to let them go yet. There's a real mix in here of different styles, and I think a lot of people, when they're designing kids' rooms and particularly nurseries, they fall into the trap of choosing a matching suite of furniture, whereas I wanted to design this room like I would any other room and mix in different styles. So we've got an antique desk that I've sourced for him. This is a piece that I hope they will have forever. And then he's got some personalised items like this toy trunk. This is actually where I keep all of his old clothes from when he was a baby that I can't bear to part with. And what I love about this is it's got his monogram OTP, which is Oscar Thomas Paterson. In this corner over here, we've got a reading corner, and this is where, when he was a baby, I used to sit here with him before I put him to bed and read a book, and you've got a little footstool. And I like how this is a lot more contemporary, so you've almost got this mid-century vibe that's combining with those beautiful antiques, and it creates a really interesting and layered approach in his bedroom. For his bed, I love that preppy style that they do so well in the US. So I've got lots of monograms, again the monogram on the cushion, on the bed linen, and then I've combined that with some tan leather on the headboard. I'm always mindful of practicality, so I wanted to mix in some really practical fabrics, but then I've added some luxurious touches like this custom bedspread that's got this beautiful trim in a leather of the Greek key. This is by Samuel & Sons. Trim is something that I use a lot in general, so again, to just make the plain Roman blinds a bit more layered and luxurious, I've added this trim down the edge, which combines nicely with the wallpaper. For the artwork, I've stuck with the theme of animals. It works out that he absolutely adores animals, which obviously I didn't know when I was designing this and I was pregnant. But these are really cute, playful photographs of baby animals. And we've just put those in a gold photo frame, but this is something that we can change out over time as he finds new interests. So this area over here is this chest of drawers, is where I used to change his nappy when he was a baby, but now we've transitioned it just into like a space for storing his toys. We have a Dachshund, a long-haired Dachshund, and Oscar is very much responsible for that because he's always been obsessed with dogs, particularly Dachshunds. One of my team members has a short-haired Dachshund, and Oscar always wanted to get his own dog. So finally, about 8 months ago, we got one. But you can see these are the remnants of when he wasn't able to have his own dog. He just had lots of teddies instead. There's some really beautiful items on these shelves. These were a gift from Fenella Elms when she found out that I was pregnant with Oscar, because we'd supported her so much in her work. She so kindly made these little mini artworks for him, which I think is just so precious. So I keep them up there nice and high so he can't break them. But even some of his own artwork, I actually love this. I think it looks like a really cool piece of modern art. I think he did this when he was about 2. It's meant to be like a reindeer, but he's completely gone out the lines, but it looks really cool. And then some of his little teddies and books that we've got here. So it's a really cute room. But now we'll head into my daughter's room. This is my daughter Ava's bedroom, and I designed this for her when she was 3. She used to sleep in what is now Oscar's bedroom, but I moved her into this larger bedroom, and I was really mindful that I didn't want her to feel displaced, so I felt like whatever we did in here had to be extra special. The main feature in here is probably her 4-poster bed, which has real princess vibes. All of the curtains work, and she absolutely loves drawing the curtains and making it into a little den at night time when she's going to sleep. She has the same chest that I had in Oscar's room, except for it's got her initials. Ava, like Oscar, also has an antique desk, and I found them both around the same time, but this one has a particularly lovely story. The dealer that sold it to me knew the family that had owned it personally, and he told me that the lady who'd owned it had died maybe 10 years before, but she was a beauty queen back in the 1930s. And this had been her dressing table all her life. So I love that we know that sort of heritage of it, and now it's Ava's dressing table that hopefully she'll have for life. This wall covering is quite a main feature in the bedroom, and I feel like I talk about wall coverings a lot. I think I have a real passion for them. This one I designed for Ava, and it since has become part of our collection with Fremantle. And Ava was very heavily involved in designing it because she, like Oscar, loves animals. And her request was that we had family groupings of the animals. So you can see here, we have the daddy elephant, the mummy elephant, and the baby elephant. And then over here, I'm not really sure who this one is, but we got a 4th elephant in there. So it's really sweet, and it has a lot of memories attached to it. Now that she's 8, she is now evolving into the next stage. And very sadly, I feel like I'm gonna have to let this wallpaper go. So I keep reminding myself every time she tells me that she wants to redecorate that this is her bedroom. So who knows, maybe in a year's time this might look different, but it's going to be a sad day for me when I have to get rid of this. Ava's a very lucky girl because she has her own sort of dressing area in the bedroom, and we took inspiration from the island in my dressing room, which she always loved. And as a surprise for one of her birthdays, I had an island made for her, and she loves playing shops in here, and I'm always the customer, and she always sells me things and tells me I have to pay with real money. And then for her wardrobes, we also wanted to go for a different approach rather than just timber. So what I did here was a timber frame all the way around, and then we've done this mother of pearl wall covering recessed into the middle, and it just adds a lot of interest and texture and lightens this whole wall up. And then these handles themselves, these are from Armac Martin. This was a handle that I designed for them, which you can see is inspired by bamboo. Now this is a very special gift for Ava. My father bought this for Ava on her first Christmas, and it's a rocking horse that was custom made by the Stevenson brothers. And the Stevenson brothers have supplied the royal family, the late Queen, ordered rocking horses for all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren by this manufacturer. So it was really special to be able to go there, and I was able to specify everything from the colour of the horse, even the saddle blanket, which you can see has been embroidered with her name. And then it has a plaque at the bottom that says, "To Ava, with love from your granddad." So I hope that this will be a future heirloom that she'll be able to give to her children. And she's had this ever since she was 1, but she still really enjoys plaiting its tail and plaiting its mane and riding on it. So I hope that she enjoys this for many years to come. This chandelier has been a really great chandelier to use in here because I really wanted something that would have a lot of width in terms of its volume, but not too much drop because the ceiling height isn't as generous. I love how this has got all these glass beads, and it kind of reminds me like a jellyfish. And it gives a really soothing light at night time when Ava's going to sleep. She always likes to leave this one on. The terrace for us and the garden on the whole is such an important part of this home. We live out here the whole time in the summer and we try and use it as much as we can throughout the year. This particular area is probably our favourite part of the garden because we have this huge fire pit which we have linked up to the gas. So when we do entertain, we always end up having drinks here after we finish dinner. We tend to come out here, and I love how this has got this really big chunky surround, so it kind of doubles up as a coffee table as well as a fire pit, and we'll have music and dancing, and again it's just like a really sociable space. For the winter months we've got these dome heaters, and I really love how sculptural they look. They almost look like they're a big floor lamp. But when you're sat here, we've even sat here on New Year's Eve watching fireworks in the garden under the heater and with the fire pit on, so it makes it a really usable space. We entertain a huge amount in the garden, and we were really lucky that on my 40th birthday, which was October last year, we had glorious sunshine and heat, so we'd planned the whole event to be in the house, and then an hour before all the guests arrived we decided to transition it all outside because it was just so beautiful, and we ended up having I think about 35-40 people around this fire pit. We had fireworks, we had a Cuban band, we've had some great parties at this house and we've got some really happy memories, and I think this is one of the best places. We have a lot of friends that have come to parties at our house and then recreated this area in their own garden because it works so well for parties. So as much as I love this area, part of the renovation I touched on earlier is that the garden is going to change, and we actually have got planning for an extension out on this part of the garden. We're going to do a pool and a pool house. So as much as I love this area, it is going to change. So if you were to come back in a year and a half's time, it would look completely different. But I'm really excited about all the plans, and we're going to have a busy year and a half between the house renovation and all of our projects. I think for me, what makes a house a home is the feeling that it creates. I think whenever I have people here, we entertain a lot, as I said earlier. I really want people to feel relaxed. I don't want them to feel like they've got to be on their best behaviour. So there's just little things that I do, like every time you're sat down in an armchair, you're always going to have a table within arm's reach so you know where to put your drink. We have performance fabrics, we're not fussy about it. And I think that really helps create that atmosphere, and that for me is what a home is about. I want to be able to have fun here, I want to relax. It's a place where we can sort of bond with our children. And then if I think about decor, it's just those personal touches. You know, I love and embrace antiques. I think they offer so much character to a home. And then just little touches like photo frames. You'll see around my home, I have so many photo frames. Memories, not just like big events like weddings, but just like memories of silly moments with the children that every time I look at it, it makes me smile and feel happy. Thank you, Homeworthy, so much for coming to have a look around my home. I've loved showing you around, and I hope to see you again soon. Maybe, who knows, you might come back in 2 years when I've completed our renovation. If you've enjoyed this tour and you'd like to see more of our work, don't forget to check us out on YouTube at Sophie Paterson Interiors. Take care, and thanks for coming to visit.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.